The morning I discovered my wife was having an affair started like any other Tuesday in our suburban Illinois home. I was sketching designs for the Odom project while Amanda rushed around the kitchen, her blonde hair catching the early sunlight as she grabbed her coffee and kissed my cheek. "Don't wait up tonight, Rob. Big venue walkthrough with the Fitzpatrick wedding team," she said, already halfway out the door. I looked up from my blueprints. "That's the third late night this week. Spring wedding season, you know how it is?" She flashed that smile that had captivated me at the Garden Expo 3 years ago. "Love you." The door slammed before I could respond. Scout, our golden retriever rescue, patted over and rested his chin on my thigh, sensing something I couldn't quite identify yet. If I'd known that morning would be the last normal one of our marriage, I might have paid more attention to the way she avoided eye contact, or how her phone buzzed incessantly in her purse. Instead, I went back to my drawings, planning out flower beds and walkways while my wife planned her next rendezvous with another man. Our story began at the Midwest Garden Expo, where I was displaying landscape designs for a local nursery. Amanda was coordinating the event logistics, moving through the crowds with clipboard in hand, and that infectious energy that made vendors and visitors alike gravitate toward her. "Excuse me, are you the architect behind the Japanese meditation garden display?" She'd approached my booth with genuine curiosity, not the polite interest I usually got from expo attendees. "Landscape architect, actually. And yes, that's my design." I gestured toward the miniature Zen garden I'd constructed, complete with flowing water features and carefully positioned stones. She studied it intently. "It's beautiful. The way you've used negative space, it feels peaceful just looking at it." That's when I knew she was different. Most people saw plants and rocks. Amanda saw the intention behind every element. "Would you like me to explain the design philosophy?" I asked. "I'd love that." We spent 2 hours discussing the balance between structure and natural flow. She understood how my architectural background informed my landscape work, how I approached outdoor spaces like living blueprints. When I mentioned needing reliable event coordination for upcoming client presentations, she handed me her card without hesitation. "Amanda Lewis, Special Events Coordination. I specialize in making outdoor venues come alive." 6 months later, she was making my life come alive too. Our courtship felt like perfectly choreographed seasons. I'd design elaborate garden parties for her clients. She'd coordinate stunning outdoor receptions in my landscaped venues. We complemented each other's work so naturally that colleagues started referring to us as a team before we'd even moved in together. "You two are like human photosynthesis," my business partner Ryan would joke. "Separate, you're both good. Together, you create something entirely new." Amanda would laugh and loop her arm through mine. "Rob brings the structure, I bring the soul." I thought that was our strength. I was wrong about a lot of things back then. Our engagement happened in the rose garden I'd designed for the mayor's mansion. I'd spent weeks timing it perfectly with the blooms, coordinating with Amanda's schedule, making sure every detail aligned. When I knelt among the climbing roses at sunset, she cried real tears. "Yes, yes, obviously yes," she'd whispered, pulling me up to kiss her. "Rob, this is perfect. You're perfect." The wedding was Amanda's masterpiece, a spring ceremony under flowering cherry trees with reception tables nestled among my carefully planned perennial borders. Everything felt intentional, rooted, like we were two plants that had found their ideal growing conditions together. "To Robert and Amanda," Ryan toasted at the reception, "may your love grow as strong as your professional partnership." And may you always remember to water it, Amanda added with a laugh, squeezing my hand. Our first year of marriage hummed along like a well-designed garden ecosystem. Morning coffee on our deck overlooking the backyard I'd landscaped for us. Weekend farmers market runs where Amanda would charm vendors while I evaluated soil quality and plant health. Evening walks with Scout through the neighborhood, planning improvements to our own space. Amanda's event planning business flourished, partly because my landscape designs gave her venues a competitive edge. She'd bring clients to see my work, and I'd recommend her services to homeowners wanting special celebrations in their gardens. "We're the power couple of outdoor events," she'd say, showing off photos of weddings we'd collaborated on. But success changed her. What started as professional networking expanded into late-night strategy sessions with other event vendors. She joined professional associations I'd never heard of, attended conferences that seemed to multiply by the month. Networking is everything in this business, Rob. You understand that, right? I did understand. I'd built my own practice through industry connections. What I didn't understand was why she needed to network until midnight on weeknights, or why her phone was always face down when we ate dinner. The first crack appeared during my firm's annual awards banquet. I'd been nominated for the Sustainable Landscape Design Award, a huge honor that Amanda had been excited about for weeks. "I can't wait to see you up there," she'd said the morning of the ceremony. "I'm wearing the blue dress you love." But when I looked for her in the audience that evening, her chair was empty. I found her purse at our table with a hastily scribbled note. "Emergency client meeting. So proud of you. A." I lost the award to a firm from Chicago, but that stung less than scanning the crowd throughout the ceremony, hoping to see Amanda rush in with an apologetic smile. When I got home at 11, she was already in bed, apparently asleep. Her dress hung in the closet, unworn. "How did it go?" she mumbled when I climbed in beside her. "Didn't win. Would have been nice to have you there." She rolled over and put her arm around me. "I'm sorry, honey. The Jameson anniversary party hit a snag with the caterer. You know how it is." I wanted to know why a catering issue required her physical presence past business hours, but her breathing had already settled into sleep rhythms. I lay awake staring at the ceiling, feeling like I was missing something important. The next morning, Amanda presented me with an expensive leather portfolio embossed with my initials. "For all those award nominations in your future," she said, kissing my temple as I examined it over breakfast. It was a thoughtful gift, exactly the kind of gesture that made me question my growing unease. Maybe I was being unreasonable. Maybe successful couples had to make sacrifices for their individual careers. "It's beautiful," I said. "Thank you for thinking of me." "Always thinking of you, baby." But she was scrolling through her phone as she said it. Ryan noticed before I admitted it to myself. "Dude, Amanda was supposed to be at the awards thing, right?" He was helping me install drainage for a residential project the week after the banquet. Client emergency. I positioned another drain tile, not meeting his eyes. Must have been some emergency. I saw Anthony Harris posting Instagram stories from Morelli's wine bar around 10:30. Amanda was in the background. My hands stilled on the pipe. Anthony Harris ran a business consulting firm that specialized in event industry optimization. Amanda had mentioned him occasionally. He was part of some professional networking group she'd joined. Maybe they were discussing the client situation, I said carefully. Ryan gave me a look that said he was trying to decide how honest to be. Maybe, but she looked pretty relaxed for someone handling a catering crisis. I finished installing the drain without responding, but Ryan's words burrowed into my brain. That evening, I mentioned Anthony's name casually while Amanda and I cooked dinner. "Oh, Anthony. Yeah, he's brilliant. He's really helping me streamline my client management systems." She chopped vegetables with focused intensity. "Did I tell you he's implementing a new scheduling platform for the networking group? Revolutionary stuff." "Sounds like it." I watched her profile as she cooked. "Revolutionary enough to require after-hours consultation?" She laughed, but it sounded rehearsed. "Rob, you know how these things work. People in our industry don't keep bankers' hours." "I know. I just miss spending evenings with my wife." She set down her knife and turned to face me, stepping close enough to run her hands up my chest. "I miss it too. But this is temporary, just until I get these new systems implemented. Then we'll have more time than we know what to do with." Her kiss tasted like promises I wanted to believe. Over the next few months, Amanda's schedule became increasingly unpredictable. Client meetings that ran past midnight, weekend, venue scouting trips that couldn't accommodate my company, emergency consultations that required immediate attention regardless of our existing plans. I started documenting these cancellations in my project notebook, not intentionally, just jotting down scheduling changes the way I tracked project modifications. The pattern that emerged was troubling. "Babe, I have to cancel our anniversary dinner," Amanda said one Thursday evening in late fall, not looking up from her laptop. "The Harrison wedding venue just fell through, and I need to find them alternatives immediately." I consulted my notes. This is the third anniversary celebration we've rescheduled. "What?" She finally looked at me, irritation flashing across her features. "Our actual anniversary. The 6-month mark when we were going to recreate our first expo meeting. The year mark when we planned to visit that botanical garden in Michigan. Now our 18-month dinner." "Rob, my business is growing faster than I ever expected. I'm sorry these opportunities don't align with arbitrary calendar dates, but this is what success looks like." Her tone carried an edge I'd never heard before. Not quite contempt, but close enough to make me step back mentally. "I understand success requires sacrifices," I said carefully. "I just thought our marriage might factor into the equation." "Of course it factors in. Everything I'm doing is for our future." She closed her laptop and stood, suddenly switching to conciliatory mode. "Look, let me make this up to you. Next weekend, no work, just us. I'll plan something special." Next weekend came and went with her locked in her office, handling a crisis, while I walked Scout alone through the neighborhood we'd planned to explore together. Winter deepened, and so did the distance between us. Amanda would come home energized from networking events, talking rapidly about new industry developments and innovative collaboration strategies. She'd describe complex discussions with consultants whose names I'd never heard, referencing inside jokes from professional gatherings I wasn't invited to. "You wouldn't find it interesting," she'd say when I asked about attending one of these industry mixers. "It's really specialized stuff. Vendor negotiations, client psychology, operational efficiency theory. Super boring unless you're in the weeds of event management." But her enthusiasm suggested otherwise. She glowed when describing these professional interactions, more animated than I'd seen her in months when discussing our own relationship. One evening in February, I found myself standing in our kitchen after Amanda had left for another urgent vendor meeting, staring at Scout as he waited hopefully by his leash. "Just you and me again, boy." Scout's tail wagged with the kind of unconditional enthusiasm I used to take for granted in my marriage. As we walked the neighborhood streets, I found myself cataloging the healthy relationships I observed. Couples walking together, families playing in yards, people who seemed genuinely happy to be in each other's company. When had Amanda and I stopped being genuinely happy together? The question haunted me through the remainder of winter. I threw myself into work, designing elaborate outdoor spaces that felt more alive than my own home. My clients praised my attention to detail, the way I created environments where everything flourished in harmony. "You have such an eye for balance," Mrs. Patterson said as I presented plans for her garden renovation. "Every element supports the others." I wished I could say the same about my marriage. Spring arrived early that year, and with it came wedding season. Amanda's schedule became even more chaotic, her phone constantly buzzing with calls and texts that she'd answer immediately, regardless of what we were doing. "Sorry, honey, just 1 second," became her standard phrase. Those 1 seconds stretched into full conversations conducted in hushed tones while I waited, feeling like an intruder in my own life. The breaking point should have been more dramatic. Instead, it was a misplaced envelope that shattered everything I thought I knew about my marriage. I'd returned from surveying a challenging hillside property that required extensive erosion control planning. My clothes were muddy, my mind focused on drainage calculations, when I noticed our mailbox flag was still up despite it being nearly 6 p.m. Amanda usually grabbed mail the moment she got home, but her car wasn't in the driveway yet. Among the usual bills and advertisements was a legal-sized envelope addressed to me, bearing the return address of a law firm I didn't recognize. Assuming it was related to one of my commercial projects, perhaps a zoning issue or permit clarification, I opened it while walking toward the house. The words, "Walker vs. Harris, civil action," meant nothing to me initially. The phrase, "summons for deposition," was more concerning. But it was the third line that stopped me cold on our front walkway. "Robert Taylor, named as material witness in dissolution proceedings related to adultery allegations." I read the sentence 3 times before its meaning penetrated. Then I read the entire document twice more, standing motionless in our driveway while Scout sniffed around the landscaping I'd installed with such hope 3 years earlier. The law firm's phone number was printed at the top of the letterhead. I called before I lost my nerve. "Fitzpatrick, Klein & Associates, this is Sarah." "This is Robert Taylor. I received a subpoena regarding Walker versus Harris, and I'm confused about why I'm involved. Let me transfer you to Mr. Fitzpatrick." The brief hold music felt surreal, a cheerful jazz melody playing while my world tilted off its axis. "Mr. Taylor, thank you for calling. I'm sure this comes as a surprise." "That's an understatement. I don't know anyone named Walker or Harris." A pause. "Mr. Taylor, you're married to Amanda Lewis, correct?" "Yes." "Anthony Harris is the defendant in Mrs. Isabella Walker's divorce proceedings. Mrs. Walker is alleging adultery as grounds for dissolution, claiming Mr. Harris conducted an extramarital affair with your wife. As Mrs. Lewis's spouse, you're being called to provide testimony regarding her whereabouts and activities over the past year." The phone slipped in my suddenly sweaty palm. "I'm sorry, what?" "I understand this is difficult to hear. Mrs. Walker's attorney will provide you with relevant documentation prior to your deposition. The affair allegations are supported by substantial evidence." "What kind of evidence?" Another pause, longer this time. "Mr. Taylor, I think it would be better if you reviewed the materials we'll be sending. They're quite comprehensive." I barely remembered hanging up or walking into the house. Scout followed me inside, where I sat heavily at our kitchen table and stared at the subpoena until the words blurred together. Amanda's key in the front door 20 minutes later sounded like a gunshot. "Rob, why are you sitting in the dark?" I hadn't noticed the sun setting. I flicked on the kitchen light as Amanda entered, her cheeks flushed from the cool evening air, looking beautiful and happy, and completely unaware that everything was about to change. "How was your day?" she asked, dropping her purse on the counter and moving to kiss my cheek. I held up the subpoena. "Interesting. How was yours?" She froze midway through removing her jacket, her eyes focusing on the legal document in my hand. "What is that?" "A summons to testify in Isabella Walker's divorce from Anthony Harris. Apparently, they're alleging he committed adultery." I kept my voice level, watching her face carefully. "With you." The color drained from Amanda's face so quickly, I thought she might faint. Her mouth opened and closed without sound, like a fish gasping for air. "Rob, I can explain. Can you? Because I just spent 20 minutes on the phone with an attorney who says they have substantial evidence of your affair. So please, explain." She sank into the chair across from me, her hands shaking. "It's not what you think. What I think is that my wife has been lying to me for months while sleeping with another man. Please tell me what it actually is." Tears started streaming down her face. "It was a mistake. A horrible mistake that got out of hand." "How long?" She wiped her nose with the back of her hand. "Rob, please." "How long?" "About 6 months." "6 months. Half our marriage." I tried to process this information while studying Amanda's face, looking for any trace of the woman I'd fallen in love with at that garden expo. All those client meetings, emergency consultations, weekend venue scouting trips. She nodded miserably. "Were any of them real?" "Some of them, most of them. It didn't start intentionally." I laughed, but it came out bitter. "Affairs rarely do, I imagine. Tell me how it did start." Amanda twisted her wedding ring, the ring I'd slipped onto her finger under flowering cherry trees just 18 months ago. "Anthony was helping me streamline my business operations. We were spending a lot of time together on process improvements, and we connected intellectually. Intellectually. It was just professional at first. Then we started grabbing coffee after meetings to discuss implementation strategies. Then dinner occasionally when sessions ran late. And then you started sleeping with him." She flinched. "It happened gradually. We were working so closely together, and he understood my professional ambitions in a way that what? That I didn't? That's not what I meant." "What did you mean?" She was sobbing now, makeup streaming down her cheeks. "I don't know, Rob. I don't know what I was thinking. It was exciting and stupid, and I convinced myself it didn't mean anything." 6 months doesn't mean anything? I kept telling myself I would end it, that it was just a phase and I'd work it out of my system and get back to focusing on us. I stood up from the table, needing physical distance from her tears and justifications. Scout followed me to the kitchen window, where I stared out at the garden beds I'd designed for our future together. "All those times you canceled our plans. All those explanations about client emergencies and industry obligations. Were you with him?" "Not all of them. Maybe half." I turned back to face her. "Our anniversary dinner that you canceled with a Harrison wedding venue crisis. Were you with Anthony?" She nodded without speaking. "The night of my awards banquet, when you had a catering emergency." "With Anthony?" Another nod. Last weekend, when you were supposedly handling a crisis while I walked Scout alone. Anthony? Yes. Each admission felt like a small death. Not just the betrayal, but the elaborate deception required to maintain it. The careful construction of lies, the manipulation of my trust, the months of looking me in the eye while living a double life. Do you love him? The question surprised us both. Amanda looked up sharply, her tears temporarily stopping. What? It's a simple question. Do you love Anthony Harris? She stared at me for a long moment. I don't know. You don't know if you love the man you've been betraying your marriage to sleep with for 6 months? It's complicated, Rob. What we have is different from what you and I have. Had. What you and I had? The finality in my voice seemed to register with her for the first time. She stood up quickly, reaching toward me. Rob, please. We can work through this. It's over with Anthony. I ended it last week. I stepped back from her outstretched hand. You ended it because you knew this lawsuit was coming? I ended it because I realized I was destroying the most important thing in my life. When did you know about the divorce proceedings? She hesitated just long enough to confirm what I already suspected. You've known for weeks that this was coming, and you didn't tell me. I shook my head in amazement. You were going to let me get blindsided by a subpoena. I was hoping it wouldn't involve you directly. You thought maybe you could continue lying indefinitely. She had no answer for that. I walked to our bedroom and pulled a suitcase from the closet. Amanda followed, panic rising in her voice. Rob, what are you doing? Packing some clothes. You can stay here tonight, but I want you gone by tomorrow evening. You can't be serious. This is our home. This was our home. Now it's just a building where 2 people happen to live while one of them lies to the other. I threw shirts and pants into the suitcase with more force than necessary, my movements sharp with controlled anger. Where will you go? Amanda asked. Ryan's guest room. Hotel. I don't know yet, and it's not your concern anymore. Rob, please don't do this. We can go to counseling. We can rebuild trust. I stopped packing and turned to face her. Amanda, for 6 months you've been living a completely fabricated version of our marriage. Every I love you, every intimate moment, every plan we made for our future. You were maintaining all of that while actively betraying it with another man. You didn't just cheat on me. You created an elaborate fantasy where I believed my wife loved me while she was building a relationship with someone else. I do love you. No, you don't. You love the security I represent. You love the professional partnership we had. You love the life we built together. But you don't love me, because if you did, none of this would have been possible. I finished packing in silence while Amanda cried. When I reached the front door, suitcase in hand and Scout on his leash, she made one last attempt. Rob, please. Don't throw away 3 years because of one mistake. This wasn't one mistake. This was hundreds of deliberate choices to prioritize your affair over our marriage. I'm not throwing anything away. You already did that. I left her standing in the doorway of what used to be our home. Ryan opened his door at nearly midnight to find me standing on his porch with a suitcase and a golden retriever. Jesus, Rob. What happened? Amanda's been having an affair for 6 months. I got subpoenaed in the guy's divorce case. Ryan stepped aside to let us in. Holy hell. Are you okay? I honestly don't know. He poured me a double whiskey while I explained the evening's revelations. Scout curled up on Ryan's couch like he'd been sleeping there his whole life. I can't believe she kept this going for 6 months, Ryan said after I'd finished the story. I can't believe I didn't see it sooner. All the signs were there. Don't do that to yourself. You trusted your wife. That's what you're supposed to do in a marriage. I stared into my whiskey glass. Ryan, remember at the awards banquet when you mentioned seeing Amanda at that wine bar with Anthony? Yeah? I should have investigated then. If I'd confronted her immediately, maybe we could have worked through it when it was still new. Or maybe she would have just gotten better at hiding it. That thought was somehow even worse. I spent the night staring at Ryan's guest room ceiling, replaying conversations and moments from the past 6 months, seeing them now through the lens of Amanda's betrayal. Every canceled plan, every hastily answered phone call, every time she'd claimed to be working late while actually building a relationship with another man. The next morning brought an email from Fitzpatrick's law firm with a secure link to download case documents. I opened the files on Ryan's laptop while he made coffee, unprepared for the scope of evidence Isabella Walker's legal team had assembled. The first document was a private investigator's report, 43 pages of detailed surveillance covering Amanda and Anthony's affair from its beginning. Photos of them entering restaurants together, hotel check-in records, text message excerpts obtained through legal discovery, a timeline that mapped their relationship progression with painful accuracy. March 15th. Subject A, Amanda, and Subject H, Anthony, observed an extended conversation at Morelli's wine bar, apparent professional consultation evolving to personal engagement. March 22nd. Subjects observed holding hands while departing Riverside Cafe after 2-hour lunch meeting. April 3rd. Subjects entered Marriott. Downtown, room 1247, remained for 3 hours during business day. The documentation continued through September, cataloging 37 documented meetings, including 7 overnight hotel stays. The investigator had been thorough, cross-referencing Amanda's public social media posts with her actual whereabouts, noting discrepancies between her claimed activities and observed behavior. September 8th. Subject A posted Instagram story indicating venue scouting in western suburbs, while actually documented with Subject H at Lakefront Hotel, confirmed via parking records and security footage. But it was the text message excerpts that destroyed me completely. Pages of communications between Amanda and Anthony, intimate exchanges that revealed the depth of their emotional connection. Amanda. I can't stop thinking about yesterday. The way you make me feel is completely different from anything I've experienced. Anthony. You're incredible. I've never connected with anyone on this level before. Amanda. I know this is complicated, but being with you feels more honest than anything else in my life. Anthony. We should talk about what this means for our respective situations. Amanda. I know, but not yet. Can we just exist in this space a little longer? The messages revealed not just physical infidelity, but emotional betrayal that cut deeper than I'd imagined possible. Amanda had shared thoughts and feelings with Anthony that she'd never expressed to me. She'd found in him something she apparently couldn't find in our marriage, something significant enough to risk everything we'd built together. I made it through perhaps half the evidence file before I had to close the laptop. That bad? Ryan asked, refilling my coffee cup. Worse than I imagined. It wasn't just sex. She was in love with him. I'm sorry, man. I called my attorney that morning, a referral from my business lawyer who specialized in family law. Patricia Hendricks had been practicing divorce law for 15 years and came highly recommended for her straightforward approach to complex cases. Based on what you've described, We have several options, she said during our phone consultation. Illinois is a no-fault divorce state, but adultery can impact property division if marital assets were used to facilitate the affair. What do you mean? If Amanda spent joint funds on hotel rooms, dinners, gifts for her lover, or other affair-related expenses, we can argue for a larger share of remaining assets as compensation for that dissipation. I thought about our joint checking account, the credit cards we shared, the money Amanda claimed to be spending on client entertainment and business development. How do I prove that? Financial records, bank statements, credit card bills, receipts if you have them. The PI report mentions several expensive dinners and hotel stays. If those were charged to accounts you both contributed to, that's dissipation of marital assets. How much are we talking about? Based on similar cases, potentially several $1,000s. It won't make you rich, but it's about establishing accountability for her choices. I scheduled an in-person meeting for the next day and spent the afternoon gathering financial documents. Amanda had always handled our bill paying and expense tracking, claiming she was better organized for administrative tasks. Now I wondered what else she'd been managing without my knowledge. The credit card statements told a clear story once I knew what to look for. Charges at restaurants I'd never heard of on nights Amanda claimed to be working. Hotel bills for venues where she definitely wasn't coordinating events. Expensive purchases at boutiques and gift shops that never resulted in anything appearing in our home. In 6 months, Amanda had spent nearly $8,000 of our joint money on her affair. When I returned to our house that evening to collect more belongings, Amanda's car was gone. She'd left a handwritten letter on our kitchen table. "Rob, I've gone to stay with my sister while we figure out how to move forward. I know you're angry, and you have every right to be. What I did was inexcusable, and I take full responsibility for destroying your trust. But please don't give up on us completely. What we had was real and important, even if I lost sight of that for a while. I'm willing to do whatever it takes to rebuild what we lost. I love you more than I ever loved Anthony, and I'm prepared to prove that if you'll give me the chance. Please think about whether 3 years of genuine love is worth discarding because of 6 months of terrible judgment. Amanda." I crumpled the letter and threw it in the garbage, then immediately retrieved it and smoothed out the wrinkles. Despite everything, some part of me wanted to believe her words. Some pathetic remnant of the man who'd fallen in love with her energy and enthusiasm at a garden expo still hoped this could be fixed. But the rational part of my brain, the part that analyzed soil conditions and planned drainage systems and understood structural integrity, knew better. You can't rebuild a foundation that's been undermined by deception. You can't restore trust that's been systematically betrayed over months of deliberate choices. I packed more clothes and a few personal items, careful not to take anything Amanda might need for her own legal proceedings. As I was leaving, Mrs. Patterson from next door stopped me in the driveway. "Robert, dear, is everything all right? We haven't seen you or Amanda around much lately." Mrs. Patterson was 73 years old and had been married to her husband for 52 years. She'd watched our courtship and wedding with grandmotherly approval, often commenting on what a lovely young couple we made. "We're going through a rough patch," I said carefully. "Oh, I'm sorry to hear that. Marriage is work, but you two always seem so well suited to each other." I managed a smile. "Sometimes things aren't what they appear." "Well, I'm sure you'll work it out. You're both such sensible people." Walking away from Mrs. Patterson's optimistic faith in our marriage felt like another small death. Our neighbors had believed in us. Our friends had envied our partnership. Our colleagues had held us up as an example of how personal and professional relationships could enhance each other. All of it had been built on Amanda's lies. That night at Ryan's, I called my parents to tell them about the separation before they heard it from someone else. My mother cried. My father offered to drive down from Wisconsin immediately. "We never saw this coming," my mother said. "Amanda always seemed so devoted to you." "She was good at seeming devoted." "Are you sure there's no way to work through this?" "Mom, she lied to me every single day for 6 months. Every morning kiss, every 'I love you,' every conversation about our future. All of it was false." People make mistakes, honey. Sometimes they deserve forgiveness. This wasn't a mistake. It was a sustained campaign of deception. My parents offered to help financially with legal fees, emotionally with whatever support I needed. Their immediate, unconditional backing gave me strength I didn't know I lacked. The next few days blurred together. Meetings with my attorney to strategize the divorce proceedings. Calls from Amanda that I didn't answer. Text messages that I deleted without reading. Work became my refuge. Client consultations and design projects that demanded focus and creativity, leaving no mental space for dwelling on betrayal. But evenings were difficult. Ryan tried to keep me busy with dinners out and movies, but sitting in restaurants where Amanda and I used to eat together, or watching romantic comedies that reminded me of what I'd lost, felt like torture. Scout seemed to understand that our family structure had changed. He stayed close to me constantly, pressing against my legs when I sat at Ryan's kitchen table reviewing legal documents, following me to the bathroom, sleeping pressed against my side on the unfamiliar guest bed. "At least you've got a friend who's completely loyal," Ryan observed one evening as Scout refused to leave my side even to eat dinner. "He's the only one." A week after moving out, I received a call from Isabella Walker, Anthony Harris's soon-to-be ex-wife. "Mr. Taylor, this is Isabella Walker. I hope you don't mind me calling directly." "Not at all, though I'm not sure what I can tell you that isn't already in the PI report. Actually, I wanted to share some information that might be helpful for your own situation." She'd discovered that Anthony had been hiding assets in preparation for their divorce. Money transferred to offshore accounts, business expenses that were actually personal purchases, consulting fees paid to shell companies he controlled. "I thought you should know because some of those questionable expenses were related to his relationship with your wife. Dinners, hotel rooms, weekend trips they took together. If he was hiding money to fund their affair, that might impact your property division." Isabella provided me with account numbers and transaction records her forensic accountant had uncovered. It painted a picture of Anthony as a man who'd planned his extramarital activities carefully, using sophisticated financial instruments to conceal expenditures from his wife while funding an elaborate courtship of mine. "He spent over $30,000 on your wife in 6 months, Isabella said. Expensive restaurants, luxury hotels, jewelry, weekend getaways. He was treating her like a kept woman while lying to both of us about his activities." The revelation that Anthony had been essentially subsidizing Amanda's double life with hidden marital assets added another layer of betrayal. Not only had my wife been unfaithful, but her lover had been funding their relationship with money stolen from his own spouse. I shared Isabella's information with my attorney, who immediately filed additional discovery motions to trace any gifts or benefits Amanda had received from Anthony. If we can prove she accepted substantial gifts from a man who was hiding assets from his wife, it strengthens our dissipation argument, Patricia explained. Amanda benefited financially from Anthony's deception, which makes her complicit in his asset hiding. The legal strategy was becoming clear. Establish that Amanda had not only betrayed our marriage emotionally and physically, but had also participated in financial improprieties that damaged both marriages involved. 2 weeks after leaving our house, I drove past it on my way home from a client meeting. Amanda's car was in the driveway, along with an unfamiliar sedan. Through the front window, I could see her sitting at our kitchen table with two people in business attire, presumably her divorce attorney, and someone else involved in her legal defense. The sight of strangers strategizing in the home we'd shared felt surreal. These people were planning how to minimize Amanda's losses from choices that had destroyed our marriage, sitting in the kitchen where we'd cooked breakfast together just 3 weeks ago. I didn't stop. There was nothing in that house I needed anymore. That evening, Amanda called me directly for the first time since I'd moved out. "Rob, please don't hang up." I almost did, but curiosity won. "What do you want?" "I want to explain some things that you might not understand about the situation." "I understand plenty." Anthony told me his marriage was already over. He said he and Isabella had been separated for months, just living in the same house for financial reasons. "And you believed that?" "I had no reason not to. He seemed like an honest person." "Amanda, you were having an affair with a married man while married yourself. Honesty wasn't exactly the foundation of your relationship." "That's not fair." "Fair? You want to talk about fair?" "I'm trying to explain that I wasn't intentionally destroying anyone's marriage. I thought Anthony was essentially single." "What about our marriage? Were you also under the impression that you were essentially single?" A long pause. "No. That part was wrong. I know that part was wrong. The part where you lied to me every day for 6 months was wrong. The part where you spent our money on hotels with your lover was wrong. The part where you chose him over me for half our marriage was wrong. But somehow you want credit for believing his lies about being separated? I'm just trying to help you understand." "I understand perfectly. You wanted to have an affair, so you convinced yourself that the married man you were sleeping with was available. You wanted to keep your comfortable life with me, so you convinced yourself that maintaining both relationships simultaneously was manageable. You wanted to avoid consequences, so you convinced yourself that elaborate deception was temporary. What I don't understand is why you think your self-serving rationalizations matter to me now. Because I love you and I want to save our marriage. You don't love me. If you loved me, you would have ended your affair the first time you felt guilty about it. If you loved me, you would have told me about the divorce proceedings the moment you knew they were coming. If you loved me, you wouldn't have let me find out about your betrayal from a legal document. Rob, do not call me again unless it's related to divorce proceedings or dividing our assets. We have nothing else to discuss." I hung up and turned off my phone. Ryan found me sitting on his back deck an hour later, staring at the garden he'd let go to weeds after his own divorce 2 years earlier. "Want to talk about it?" She called to explain that she thought Anthony was separated, like that somehow makes the affair acceptable. Classic cheater logic. It wasn't that bad because I told myself a story that made it seem okay. 6 months, Ryan. She sustained a complete double life for 6 months while telling herself she wasn't really destroying 2 marriages. People are incredibly good at self-deception when it serves their purposes. I gestured toward his overgrown garden beds. You know what the difference is between a garden and a weed patch? Intention. Gardens require deliberate choices, consistent effort, regular maintenance. Weeds just grow wild wherever they land. Okay. Amanda made deliberate choices every single day to cultivate her affair while letting our marriage grow wild. She put intention and effort into building something with Anthony while treating what we had like it would maintain itself without attention. That's actually a pretty good metaphor. I'm a landscape architect. I think in metaphors about growth and maintenance and what thrives under different conditions. Ryan opened 2 beers and handed me one. So what kind of environment do you want to create for yourself going forward? It was a good question. For the past month, I'd been reacting to Amanda's betrayal, responding to legal requirements, managing the immediate crisis. I hadn't thought beyond the divorce about what kind of life I wanted to build. Something honest, I said finally. Something that doesn't require constant vigilance to make sure the people I trust aren't lying to me. That sounds like a good foundation to start with. The deposition was scheduled for a Thursday morning in downtown Chicago. I wore my most professional suit and brought a leather portfolio, not the one Amanda had given me, which felt contaminated by association, but a plain black one I'd purchased specifically for legal proceedings. Isabella Walker's attorney, a sharp woman in her 50s named Catherine Mills, explained the process beforehand. We're primarily interested in Amanda's schedule and behavior over the past year. When she claimed to be working late, attending conferences, handling client emergencies, anything that seemed unusual or inconsistent with her normal patterns. How detailed do you want me to be? As detailed as you can remember. We're trying to establish the scope and duration of the affair, which impacts property division in both divorce cases. The deposition lasted 3 hours. Question after question about Amanda's comings and goings, her explanations for schedule changes, her mood and behavior patterns. I found myself recounting intimate details of our marriage to a room full of strangers, describing the gradual erosion of our relationship while a court reporter typed every word. Did Mrs. Lewis ever mention Anthony Harris specifically in relation to her work? Yes. She said he was helping optimize her business operations through some networking group she'd joined. Did she describe the nature of this optimization work? She mentioned scheduling platforms, client management systems, operational efficiency theory. She said it was specialized and I wouldn't find it interesting. How often did she reference these business improvement sessions? Several times a week. She was very enthusiastic about the innovations they were implementing. The questions continued until I'd constructed a complete timeline of Amanda's deception. Every canceled dinner, every late-night emergency, every weekend when she'd claimed to be venue scouting while actually building a relationship with another woman's husband. When it was over, I felt drained but oddly relieved. The truth was now part of the official record. Amanda's choices had legal consequences that extended beyond our marriage. Catherine Mills walked me to the elevator afterward. Thank you for being so thorough. I know this was difficult. Will it help Isabella's case? Significantly. And it should help your own divorce proceedings as well. Your attorney can use this deposition transcript to support your claims about asset dissipation. Driving home from the deposition, I realized I'd started thinking of Ryan's house as home. Not just a temporary refuge, but a place where I could plan my next chapter without constant reminders of what I'd lost. That evening, Amanda left a voicemail. Rob, I know you said not to call, but I need you to know that the deposition wasn't an accurate representation of our marriage. You made it sound like I stopped loving you or caring about our relationship, and that's not what happened. I made terrible choices, but my feelings for you never changed. Please don't let lawyers and legal proceedings define what we meant to each other. I deleted the message without responding. The financial discovery phase of my divorce revealed the full scope of Amanda's deception. Bank records showed systematic cash withdrawals that corresponded with her documented meetings with Anthony. Credit card bills included charges for lingerie I'd never seen her wear, perfume she'd never used around me, expensive wine she'd claimed was for client entertainment. Most damaging was a series of charges for a weekend getaway to Lake Geneva that Amanda had claimed was a solo retreat to clear her head about our marriage problems. Hotel records showed Anthony had been registered in the same suite. She was literally spending your money to maintain her affair while telling you she needed space to think about your relationship, Patricia observed during our strategy meeting. It's almost impressive in its audacity. The discovery also revealed that Amanda had opened a separate checking account 3 months into the affair, funded with money transferred from our joint savings. She'd been building financial independence while maintaining the facade of marital partnership. She was planning her exit strategy, Patricia said. This wasn't a spontaneous affair that got out of hand. She was systematically preparing to leave you. The evidence painted Amanda not as a woman who'd made a series of impulsive mistakes, but as someone who'd strategically planned a double life with remarkable attention to detail. Armed with comprehensive documentation of Amanda's financial improprieties, we filed a motion for temporary support and exclusive use of our marital home. Amanda would be required to find alternative housing while paying me spousal maintenance until the divorce was finalized. Her attorney filed a response claiming my demands were vindictive and unreasonable, arguing that Amanda's infidelity shouldn't result in her being financially punished. The judge disagreed. Mrs. Lewis systematically used marital assets to fund an extramarital relationship while deceiving her husband about the nature of her activities, Judge Martinez ruled. Mr. Taylor is entitled to compensation for this dissipation of marital property, and Mrs. Lewis's housing situation is a consequence of her own choices. I was awarded temporary exclusive use of our house and $1,500 monthly in spousal support. Money Amanda would have to pay me while she lived elsewhere and rebuilt her life around the consequences of her decisions. Returning to our house alone felt strange at first. Every room held memories of our life together, but they seemed like artifacts from someone else's relationship. I found myself editing our shared history, distinguishing between genuine moments and times when Amanda had been present physically but emotionally invested elsewhere. The master bedroom was the hardest space to reclaim. I replaced our bedding, rearranged the furniture, and converted Amanda's walk-in closet into a home office. Gradually, it began feeling like my space rather than a shrine to our failed marriage. Scout adapted more quickly than I did, claiming his favorite sunny spot by the living room window and settling into routines that didn't include waiting for Amanda's return. 3 months after moving back into the house, I was working in the garden when my neighbor Mrs. Patterson approached the fence between our properties. "Robert, I hope you don't mind me saying, but you seem to be doing well." "Thank you. It's been an adjustment. I don't know the details and it's none of my business, but whatever happened between you and Amanda, you're handling it with real dignity." Mrs. Patterson's observation meant more to me than she probably realized. Dignity had been my goal throughout the divorce proceedings, to handle Amanda's betrayal without becoming bitter or vindictive, to seek fair compensation without pursuing revenge. I appreciate you saying that. You're a good man, Robert. Whatever comes next for you, I know it'll be wonderful. As spring turned to summer, the divorce proceedings moved toward resolution. Amanda agreed to a settlement that gave me 70% of our marital assets, acknowledging that her dissipation of joint funds warranted unequal distribution. She would keep her event planning business and her car. I would keep the house and most of our savings. More importantly, the settlement included a non-disclosure clause preventing either of us from discussing the details of our marriage or divorce publicly. Amanda's affair had already damaged her professional reputation. Several clients had canceled contracts after learning about her involvement in the Walker-Harris divorce scandal. I didn't want to compound her professional difficulties, but I also didn't want her crafting a revisionist narrative about our failed marriage. The final divorce hearing was scheduled for a humid Tuesday in July, exactly 18 months after our wedding day. Amanda attended with her attorney, but we didn't speak directly. Judge Martinez reviewed our settlement agreement, confirmed that both parties understood its terms, and signed the decree dissolving our marriage. "Congratulations," Patricia said afterward as we gathered documents. "You're officially single." The word felt foreign. After 3 years with Amanda, 1 year dating, 18 months married, I'd forgotten how to think of myself as an individual rather than half of a couple. That evening, I sat on my back deck with Scout, surveying the garden beds I'd designed during happier times. The perennials were thriving in their second season. The ornamental grasses had filled in beautifully, and the fruit trees I'd planted were beginning to establish themselves. Gardens take time to mature, I reflected. Relationships that seem perfect in their first spring might not have the root structure to survive difficult seasons. But the plants that develop slowly, that adapt to changing conditions while staying true to their essential nature, those were the ones that created lasting beauty. I was 42 years old with no children, a successful landscape architecture practice, and a paid-off house in a neighborhood I loved. The future felt open in a way it hadn't since college, uncertain but full of possibilities. My phone buzzed with a text from Ryan. "Heard the decree was finalized. Want to celebrate your freedom?" I typed back, "Already celebrating. Come over." 6 months later, I was redesigning the garden at the Patterson house when a woman approached with an armload of native plant specimens. "Excuse me, are you the landscape architect? I'm Sarah Elston from the Botanical Society. We're working with the Pattersons on their pollinator garden project." She had dark hair pulled back in a practical ponytail, dirt under her fingernails, and the kind of enthusiasm for plant ecology that I remembered falling for once before. But this time felt different, grounded in shared professional respect rather than romantic projection. "Robert Taylor, nice to meet you." We spent an hour discussing soil amendments and plant placement, while Scout napped in the shade of Mrs. Patterson's oak tree. Sarah's knowledge of native ecosystems complemented my design sensibilities in ways that felt natural and unforced. "Would you be interested in collaborating on the Botanical Society's habitat restoration project?" she asked as we finished reviewing the planting plan. "I'd like that." Working with Sarah over the following months, I rediscovered the professional satisfaction that had originally drawn me to landscape architecture. Her scientific approach to ecological restoration balanced my aesthetic concerns in ways that produced beautiful, functional outdoor spaces. We were surveying a site for prairie reconstruction when she mentioned her recent divorce. My ex-husband was a good man, but we wanted completely different lives. It took me too long to admit that fundamental incompatibility can't be fixed with compromise. How do you know when someone is genuinely compatible versus just initially exciting? Time, I think, and paying attention to how they handle disappointment, stress, competing priorities. My ex was charming during courtship, but became resentful when real life demanded sacrifice and collaboration. I thought about Amanda's excitement during our early relationship, how she'd been energized by our professional synergy until the novelty wore off, and she'd sought more stimulating connections elsewhere. Do you think people change, or do they just reveal who they always were? Probably both. People can grow and adapt, but their core values and character patterns are pretty stable. If someone consistently chooses deception over honesty or excitement over stability, that's probably who they are. Sarah and I worked together for 8 months before our first dinner that wasn't related to a restoration project. Another 6 months before I kissed her after a particularly successful native plant installation. 2 years before we moved in together. The progression felt intentional and sustainable in ways my relationship with Amanda never had. Sarah and I built trust through shared work, proved our compatibility through various challenges, and chose each other repeatedly through changing circumstances. When we married, a small ceremony in the garden behind our house, officiated by Mrs. Patterson, who'd become ordained online for the occasion, it felt like the natural culmination of a relationship that had developed deep roots over time. Amanda sent a wedding gift, a book about sustainable landscaping with a note. Wishing you genuine happiness. I appreciated the gesture but felt no urge to respond. Amanda belonged to an earlier chapter of my life, one I'd learned from but had no interest in revisiting. 5 years after our divorce, I occasionally saw updates about Amanda's life through mutual professional connections. She'd rebuilt her event planning business with a focus on corporate functions rather than weddings. She'd never remarried, though she'd had several long-term relationships. I felt no satisfaction in her apparent struggles to maintain lasting partnerships, but I wasn't surprised either. Trust, once broken systematically and deliberately, left patterns that were difficult to overcome. Sarah and I had been married 3 years when we encountered Amanda at a trade show in Chicago. She looked older, more carefully put together, but somehow less vibrant than I remembered. Robert, hello. Sarah, I presume. Amanda's smile was polite but strained. Good to see you, Amanda. How's business? Growing steadily. I found my niche with corporate events, less romantic drama than wedding planning. There was an awkward pause while we all processed the irony of her statement. Well, it was good seeing you, I said finally. You too. Take care of yourself, Robert. Walking away from that encounter, Sarah slipped her hand into mine. That wasn't as difficult as you expected, was it? No. It felt like meeting a former colleague, someone I used to work with but haven't thought about in years. That's probably healthy, I squeezed her hand. It is. The trade show continued around us, vendors displaying their latest innovations, professionals networking and planning future collaborations. Life moving forward, as gardens do, through cycles of growth and renewal, each season building on lessons learned from the seasons before. Sarah and I stopped at a booth featuring drought-resistant perennials, discussing which varieties might work for our latest restoration project. Business, partnership, shared enthusiasm for creating beautiful, sustainable environments. It was exactly the kind of authentic collaboration I'd thought I'd had with Amanda, but with the crucial difference of genuine mutual respect and unwavering honesty. The difference between a marriage built on solid ground and one constructed on the shifting soil of deception and competing loyalties. Scout, now gray around the muzzle but still enthusiastic about garden adventures, tugged gently on his leash toward the exit. Time to head home to the life we'd built together. Sarah, me, and a golden retriever who'd remained loyal through every season of change. Some plants survive winter by going dormant, conserving energy until conditions improve. Others maintain their structure year-round, adapting to harsh weather while staying fundamentally themselves. I'd learned finally which kind of person I wanted to be.